Hello, hi Sharif.
Angie?
Thanks for coming on to do this. I am really keen to get your perspective on menopause, and I know that you are quite keen to talk about it and get some of the male ideas around this as well. So, first question, if we go straight in, why do you say that perimenopause is a relevant conversation for men to get involved in?
Um, so again, I've got to back this up by saying while I've done a bit of research, I'm no expert on any of this. So my understanding is all women go through menopause or and obviously perimenopause to get to that point. Um, and because of that, pretty much, well, I imagine a vast number of men or all men will at some point know a woman, be close to a woman in a relationship. You know, if they're lucky enough to have a close mother, still have their mother with them, or sisters, or girlfriends, or wives. Um, so I always think that it's relevant to us because we're experiencing it as well. Now we can step away from it. It's not really that internal to us.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that we need to have some sort of understanding about it. I was relating it to somebody. It's a bit like pregnancy. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't get pregnant, um, but we are part of the process of pregnancy, as it were. And if we
Yeah,
don't, and if well, again,
yeah,
I am generalising here,
okay.
but so men started going to classes to understand what's going on and what their partner or whoever it is going through at that time to understand it better. And I feel that's taken years. I know my dad didn't, so didn't go to those sort of things. I know I tried to, but it wasn't like a you weren't shamed into going to classes when when my kids are 20 now. But it's taken many years to get to that point, and I think I always see menopause as the same sort of thing. And not just menopause, but also the female menstrual cycle as well, which is I don't know, it's the other end of it, I suppose. But and so I think we need to understand it as men, to be able to support the women that we're probably very close to, if we're in a position like that. It's also I keep saying we. I talk about the royal we of men. Um, we, we really notice the change, right? And I'm hoping this is what's happened over the recent years, is that's not happening anymore. Men notice change, and we have some really quite crude and not very helpful stereotypes of what happens when women go through menopause, and it's not good, because it's just not true, or it's based on something that then we just you know oh, she's going mad. Oh, she's having one of the moments, and
Yeah.
it's not right. No, but that's comes out of ignorance and lack of understanding from our part. So if we've got a partner, a wife, a girlfriend, a very close friend, your mum that you still live at home with, and this is happening, um, we need to just understand why it's happening.
Mhm.
And I don't mean everybody has to become a menopause expert. In the same way, you'd have to become a midwife to understand pregnancy. I'll
Yeah,
stop. I'll
true.
stop referring. That's the only thing I can think of as an example. Um,
It's all right. It's good.
and so I think it's important for men to have some understanding of um, about it, because then at least if you can see something that's happening and you know roughly what it is, you don't go off the rails or anything like that. And if we don't talk about it and we don't show any willing to understand about it, then women won't talk to you about it, and then it starts this vicious circle of a really poor communication that creates its own issues,
Mm.
and then you just whoever it is. I mean, I think in most cases I'm referring to your girlfriend or your wife or your living partner. Um, you'll just start driving a wedge, because if things are happening, someone won't both of you will have a reason not to talk to the other person. So
Yeah, I
so
see that a lot.
yeah, and I do think it's important. That's why I think men need to be involved in. I'll have conversations about it, at
Yeah,
the very least, and not just say, "Oh, she's going through the change," and that's how it is. That's
it
how it
is.
is talked about.
And I think you're right that that perception does tend to come from ignorance, and also I wonder, does that come from fear as well? Like, oh, I don't know what that's about. Oh, that's women stuff.
It's women stuff.
Sure, what that is.
It's like, I mean, I've got two daughters, um, and initially when I remember when I first had I used to spoke to their mother, and I'd say, look, I don't, you need to talk to them about that sort of stuff.
Mm,
And then I realized that that's wrong, because then you don't have build a relationship with your daughters.
mm,
Um, so I did try and have this conversation. I did try and understand it, and I didn't. I tried not to be, you know, all coy about it. And my kids' generation seem to be very much more open about those sort of things. And so I see there's a lot of hope for, you know, the next couple of generations where this information gets out there more.
mm.
And I think it's that whole women's bit. So I don't really want to talk about it. And why? Because
Yeah, good question.
I'll tell you, Angie, right? Blokes talk about their bits to each other all the time, right? You know, it may be flippant ways, it may not be a very detailed, but they just go no problem going on about it. But you know, as soon as we start wanting to talk about women's bits, it freaks people out, and I think it's
Mm,
the ignorance is built off the back of that, and sometimes I
right.
don't think it's out of malice or for
Mm,
wanting to be nasty, um, but it's just awkward. I think is what most men would
right.
probably describe it as.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that even though it's awkward and it doesn't feel like this conversation's awkward, but you've obviously been through that awkwardness to get there to want to come on and talk publicly. When we chatted about this initially, why I contacted you because we have a mutual friend, your partner Nikki, and that we'll talk about, I'm sure. But what really made me think, yeah, I need to speak to you and get your words out there publicly was when you said you wanted to put the men into menopause. And I appreciate that you're a little bit wary of, but I think that was brilliant, actually.
I think I told you it popped in the again. So I was. This happened when I was supporting Nikki when she was running across Australia, which she recently did to set a world record. So we were living in a van a lot the whole time. There wasn't a lot. It was for 3 months, um,
Mm,
and I had a lot of time to think. I was sat in a van doing nothing, um, and I've been thinking about this a lot, because you know we'll talk about it now, but you know I've my understanding of things, all things perimenopause, has come out since I met Nikki, about 7 years ago. She's 56 now, so I met her just before she turned 50, and she mentioned about perimenopause, and I'd never heard the word before. I didn't know what perimenopause was. I'd heard of menopause,
mm,
and then assumed, you know, that was the thing. Oh, you're going through the menopause, um, and that was when you know, my recollection of it is my mum was nuts, and had really massive mood swings, and wasn't, you know, and that's it. That's what all blokes had. So when I asked
mm,
her more about it, I understood it more, and then it became more relevant. So Nikki runs a lot, as you might guess from her running across Australia. So I'm we live together, so I see her training patterns, I see what she's doing, and all the adventures she's done in the past, and how perimenopause, this all affects her. So I started understanding it more because she was trying to look into it, because she had some issues, she had some quite serious injuries that came on because of this without making any changes herself. Um, and so I sort of came to understand it more from that angle. That's when I started realizing that all of the things that I thought I knew about it were pretty much wrong. Or I think I said just now, sort of crude stereotypes. It
yeah,
just not very helpful.
yeah,
Um, and like I said, because I was living because I live with Nikki, and this was affecting things that I was helping her with, so planning for the adventures and so on, and towards supporting her through any training. I started understanding her cycle, and I started listening to what she was saying about, you know, things that she was researching, and
mm,
that's how I got to realize that this is not a, a strange alien thing. It's just something that happens,
mm,
and understanding it better makes, well, from a selfish point of view, my life a lot easier.
mm, yeah,
Um, you know, if I have an understanding, and it's the same with anything. If you have an understanding about it, it makes it easier. But also, it means that you don't have to be ignorant about it. And
yeah,
and I've actively been trying to point out to some of my friends sometimes, because we don't talk about it as blokes to each other. Again, it'll be a flippant comment about your wife, or you know, come to the
yeah,
public. And so I've mentioned to my friends quite a lot over the last few years about, you know, to keep an eye on changes, because it'll affect them really badly, and especially it will affect them a lot, in their
yeah,
relationship with them, and because most of them have got,
absolutely.
you know, kids who are fairly, well,
Yeah,
younger than my kids. So it is just trying to make them aware of things that might happen.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. You can be the ambassador for the men. It's getting a little bit more common in the people that I speak to. I was recently spoke at an event, and I asked the ladies there if they thought they were at perimenopause stage and how they knew. And one of the answers was because my husband told me. One fell about laughing at that, but actually, that's quite a change. That's quite a change. Most of the conversation I get with clients and people that I speak to in generally is that ignorance from men, and there's a huge diversity, isn't there? And I talk a lot myself about the individuality of peri and postmenopause and how that affects us as women, and yet we don't talk about how that affects our relationships very much. That's still a bit of not so much of a taboo subject, but that's a difficult subject, I think, because we're still coming to terms with that changing relationship within ourselves, and that can put difficulties into all of our relationships
I,
for sure.
I agree,
Yeah.
and a lot of my friends have got, so there's seems to be a shift where couples are having children later as well, and it can be masked by the fact that you've got the kids. You know,
Yeah.
you can almost fill in the gaps when there's any problems to avoid talking about it if you've got the kids there to do something.
Mm.
And then obviously as you get older, you haven't got the kids there, and things can be highlighted. And I think sometimes it's not even you're not even aware that it's that because something I thought about the other day is sometimes the women don't know as much as the men know. You know, they haven't got a clue. They don't know why there's some changes, and sometimes people are resistant to thinking that it's that.
Yes.
I don't want it to be that, so I won't talk about it. So
Yes.
sometimes it's not just the men that are ignorant about what's happening,
Yeah.
it's women. And then if you start associating it with something else, so say something bad's happened, so you assume that you're feeling depressed because of that thing, or
Mm.
something like that. The anxiety's been caused because of money or something.
Mm.
And I think it can be hidden if you don't want to. There's a certain amount of acceptance from both men and women that it's
Yeah.
happening. And,
Yeah.
men don't want to accept that it's happening sometimes because they think, oh, well, that's the end of our sex life, for example.
Right.
And it's, but again, that's born out of ignorance.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, here we go. There's more mood swings, and and that lack of information just doesn't help.
Yeah.
In all of this, I'm not saying to men that become experts and but just at least have a basic understanding of what's going on, so you can see things. I've got it's all one. Also, another thing is it's all good talking to. I get to talk to Nikki about it, and we're very close about it. Um, I think I've got friends who perhaps have gone through. I know I've got friends who've gone through it, and at the time I didn't know what it was, so, even as a thing. But they realised afterwards that that period of life was perimenopause, or still is. Um, but if you see that in your friend, I think it'd be even harder to discuss if you haven't got an understanding of what to. Because you could see it in a female friend, for example, or co-worker, that something's happening. That I think I was thinking about this earlier on. I think I'd find that really hard to approach somebody at the minute. So you you're in perimenopause, because if they haven't got that could be a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
uh, kettle of fish that happens. But so that's something else that to think about. But again, if you haven't got the information and the understanding, you wouldn't even know where
Yeah.
to start.
Yeah. So what's helped you then to understand what we go through as women, and you've mentioned that you've talked to Nikki quite a lot
Yeah,
about it. Is
I think that's my main source. I mean,
okay.
I've listened to Nikki. Um, Again, this started off with a little bit of selfishness because I wanted to, why are you fidgeting in bed? Why am I getting a bad night's sleep?
Right.
Why is my bed soaking wet with your sweat print? Why why are you shouting at me? Why are you down all of a sudden? Yesterday you were amazing. So it started off with that, and then understanding. Well, hang on, this happened last month, or this happened 3 weeks ago, or what's happening here? And then it was just as she was trying to understand it more as well. She was explaining to me. So I think the way I sometimes describe it is I let her talk at me. So
Right.
she watches. uh, She'd be out training. She'd listen to podcasts or read books or whatever she was doing, and then she would want to talk about it, and I just let it. And then I go, actually, this is while I while I'm not becoming an expert as such, I'm just taking in the information that I need, and I think that was my main um, my main way of finding out sort of more detailed information about stuff.
Mm,
I paid attention to, like I
mm,
just said, about things that were happening regularly. Now, again, this fell into. I was fortunate in that, I try and keep an eye on her training. I don't coach her or anything, but obviously I'm aware that she's going for a run today or she's doing this today, um, and seeing things happening regularly. Again, things like down when she's really down and thinks, what's the point of doing this, and why am I doing this? And then
mm.
days when she's super like hyped up and to the point of angry sometimes and just goes and does stuff and completes it. It was understanding when they were happening, and as you see that again, that then goes, well, why is this happening? And it spawns more questions off the back of it. So that's mainly how I've tried to. I see things on social media, but then I don't really pay attention to other subjects. So it's not that I'm ignoring anything about menopause specifically, but I do see stuff coming up a lot more now on my social media feeds and online.
Yeah.
And it's celebrities, and sometimes I'll pay attention to it. Normally, I'll then go to Nick and just say, "Did you see so and so?" And she say, "Yeah, I saw that. It was rubbish." Or I saw that. Yeah, that made sense. And again, that it's actually thinking about it now. As I just said that, it then just goes back to me and her talking
Yeah.
about it, and I sort of I see snippets out and about that that make me say to her, "Oh, how?" I verify it with her almost. Um,
Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah.
so and so said this today," and she's like, "Yeah, just ignore it." Or
Mm,
I think we had when we had a chat before about the frustration sometimes of misinformation, but I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's just people are trying to get a not. I don't know if they're trying to use this as a way of gaining popularity in any way or something. But sometimes there's a bit of misinformation that,
mm. I
that
think there is some of that as well. Let's
uh,
call it out. Yeah.
yeah, and that's not from men. That's
Mm.
men. I haven't seen any men talking about this yet.
No.
So,
Oh, actually, yes, I have.
have you?
I've seen some certain male fitness
Oh, okay.
profiles, let's say, talking about it and leveraging, in my opinion, leveraging menopause as a whole as a way to gain popularity,
Yeah.
and that really frustrates me. Yeah, because
This
it's
this is
false information that they give most of the
so.
time.
This is the thing that this run across Australia, Nick was trying to show as well. One of the main purposes of this was to show that you can do these things, but you have to make changes, or you know you will probably have to make changes.
Hmm.
Nick fractured her pelvis 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. She was trying to run 100 marathons in 100 days, which sounds ridiculous, by the way.
Just
But
as
but
you
it's the sort of thing she does, right? She did
do.
63 and 63 when I first met her,
Yeah.
and she didn't realise the changes. She knew she was in perimenopause, but she didn't realise the changes, and as a result, her bone density wasn't quite right, and something she would normally do as normal, she broke.
Mm,
And that's something she's trying to get out there as well is people accepting that they're going through perimenopause, right? So that's the
mm,
first thing, because there's a lot of ultra runners now in their late 30s, well, loads of female ultra runners, but coming into their 40s now and into their 50s, and if they're not going to make those changes, they're going to break themselves and they won't know why if they haven't accepted where they are.
yeah, it does take that awareness for
So,
sure.
so the fitness side of things is really important, but if you get that information wrong,
Mm.
so we're going off a slightly different topic now, but if you're not getting the correct information out there, that's a
And
real
that's
worry.
true for anybody, whether it's fitness
Yeah,
or trying to just get through a normal day with irritating kids, or people at work and people pissing you off in the office. That could be anything. Get the information wrong, and you slow yourself down. I've
yes,
seen it myself in clients. You slow down the feeling better, the finding what works, and yeah, that's frustrating in itself.
yeah. So that essentially, I find my information out from Nikki.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to just listening to her and talking to her, and then bouncing ideas off her. We do this anyway about stuff about her running and so on and writing. So it doesn't. It's not a huge difference. It's just a different subject. But
Yeah.
I tend to clarify or verify information online with her first about it before I pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
But
But what I'm
that's
hearing is that it's for one thing, it's curiosity on your part, that you have that interest, and you have the awareness of that there are certain you're calling it out for what it is, the misinformation,
Yeah,
but also the ignorance that has just dominated male understanding of the change and menopause as a whole, lumping it all together. You're seeing beyond that, and there's the curiosity around that that I see from you, and the communication between the two of you is astounding actually. But I can appreciate that the experience that you've just come through of that big fitness and endurance event that's kind of pushed you together, so that's probably speeding up the process of
oh,
having to have good communication.
yes, and we're in a quite a, well, I wouldn't say unique, but it's a rare situation where, like I said, we both work from home as well. Well, when we're at home, she hasn't been home for 6 months, so um, um, and we've both got very different things that we do at home. So we are just constantly in each other's pockets. I mean, people laugh about it, but it must be it proves your relationship. When she did the 63 marathons in 2017, we've been together for 4 months, 5 months, and I joined her on it. We were living in the very same conditions, and um, so yeah, we are a bit unique in that, but that doesn't mean to say that people. I mean, so I probably have a bit more curiosity about it because it affects what she does, um, and how she succeeds is, it's important to me. She's got things she wants to do, and I want to make sure she can do them and help her. But that doesn't mean that people who don't really talk that much. And that sounds awful, but couples who don't talk that much doesn't mean they don't have to not understand it and look into it themselves. I think it's been, in the nicest possible way, it's been forced upon me, because if I didn't know about it, then how could I help her? Like I said, I
Yeah,
supported her. I support her on all her runs, and if I can't work out what's going on that day, I can't do it to the best of my ability, and
yeah.
make it succeed. So yeah, it is a very I'd even say privileged situation. I'm some men wouldn't like this situation where we're that close all the time, and certainly in a van for 3 months where it wasn't big enough. It drive people mad. But yeah, I'm thankful for it, and that's where it spawned all this sort of research and trying to understand and make things work.
And I think that that understanding, whether you're living in a van together or not, I think that that's an option for everybody. We can all, um, whether we're going through that sort of partnership and very close relationship that the two of you have, or there's two people in a relationship that don't have that, or something in between. I don't think that the choice of being curious and having good communication, I don't think it relies on living in a van together for 3 months. But yeah, what if you could give advice to, or words of encouragement or advice or something to men, if you think back to your early position of not knowing anything about it and wondering what the hell was going on, what advice would you give to other men in that situation?
I think that the main thing is just to listen, uh, and listen and try and understand what's going on. So don't just dismiss something that. So funny enough, back in when she did the 60 marathons, there were things happening then that I assumed it was because of the runs. She was doing a
Mm,
marathon every day. Things like the hot sweats. They weren't all the time though. Now looking back, I realised that this actually probably, I don't know if she was monitoring a cycle at that time, but it probably all fits into right now. It's probably the same cycle that she was going through. So it's noticing things and listening to things that people are saying to you. Like I said, if you're noticing something happening, this, oh God, she's doing it again. Well, if she's doing it again, she, if she's doing it again, um, and it's happened again. So why is it happening again? And asking the question. So I did make a note, and it was about asking. The problem with asking is I'm generalizing again, but we as men, we're sort of ingrained not to ask certain questions or say
right.
certain things.
Yeah.
This stems from, I made a note. It's that line. I hate the line as well. Is it that time of the month, love? And it's said in that patronising tone, and it's not even meant well, right? So
Mm,
it's a very nasty thing that we as men used to say about women's menstrual cycle.
And still say it. Yeah.
Still say it. They still say it.
Yeah. Lots
Absolutely.
of them. Yeah.
But I said this to Nick on a lot. I said, look, I'm asking this question. Don't take it the wrong way, because you've got to be direct sometimes. And I'd ask her, look, or I'd say to her, look, you're feeling down like this because it's that time of the cycle again. But sometimes you need to ask the question, but you need to ask it in a way that isn't like in any sort. But it is that question
Mm.
of look, is it that? Because until you understand it slightly,
Mm.
you've got to broach that barrier and ask the question that I'm offering myself up here to say I don't understand, but I want to understand.
Yeah.
Is this part of your cycle? Is it your time of the month? But it's how you say it, and if you're close to somebody,
Mm.
then in theory you should be able to ask that question. But it's not something that we as men would want to ask. But
Mm.
until you say, "Oh, hang on, that happened before." Is that because of
Yeah.
again, it might be that the female, the woman, might not even know herself. But
Yeah.
if you
Exactly.
point it out, well, this happened last month or 3 weeks ago, or you've had this before,
Mm.
then at least you start the conversation. You can both find out. But I think that's the main thing is listening and noticing things.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
thing is, if you're not listening, you're not noticing things anyway, or you wouldn't notice it, then you're probably not curious enough or you're probably in a sort of relationship where you don't. It doesn't really matter. You're both doing
Mm.
what you're doing, and it's fine. But I think it's if you're noticing things, uh, listen to what's being said and then talk about it. And it's such a cliche thing, but if you don't ask and don't talk about it, then you're never going to find out. And that's what we um, that's what we do. And it is just trying to find out what's going on because it makes both our lives easier and it makes the things that she does and me more successful. Because if you know more about it, then you can do things that make it better.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it sounds and you only speak for yourself, but you also speak for the masses. You have
Yeah,
lots of men that you're representing potentially, and I myself am representing all of womanhood, and I like the way that you've worded that. For me, it's difficult to speak for everybody, but asking you're very right that there's two ways to ask that question. Is it that time of the month? It can be asked in a way that's accusatory, and it could be judgmental, and it could be asked as a statement and end of conversation. But the way that you've asked it is like a curious, help me understand,
yeah,
and help me understand what's going on for you, and you become part of the solution in that way, because we do need to know that we're not alone. There's a lot of feeling of loneliness within the whole peri to postmenopause journey, and we need to know that you're with us, that you're not outside of that.
yeah.
We need the
And
support.
it,
So
and
yeah.
it may be that it's you don't learn as a bloke. You don't learn about it. You're not the main person that he speaks to. But as long as someone knows that you care enough to pay attention, and if you're not that very good at talking about it, then they can go and talk to their friends. But if they if even if you just show a bit of understanding about it, you don't have to get involved. Some men are still a bit squirmish about things, and again, I'm hoping it's a generational thing, and what am I, the Gen X crowd move on. We're in a nice transition into the next generation where they do understand and talk more about it.
Mm.
But at least if you show if you show interest,
Mm.
I'm sure that's very helpful and very supportive. And at least then, um, that lady knows that coming home, there's someone there that doesn't just shrug it off, but
Mm.
isn't so I don't know, touchy feely about it, but at least they know that there's understanding. So again, even the basic level of understanding or just taking an interest is I think is really important
Mm.
from a male point of view. Actually, I mean, from a female point of view as well. Again, we've said this before. I imagine there's a lot of women who don't know anything. They probably know the same amount as some blokes know. And again, if they're dismissive, younger women, all female relationships, it could cause more trouble. And I imagine some women go through perimenopause without any problems. It's like a nice pregnancy, just swinging through. What's all this fuss about? I don't know what's wrong with you all.
Yeah,
Again,
that happen.
and if they don't have an understanding about what's going on in other women, it causes the same problem. But yeah,
Mm.
I imagine it's going to be worse in men. So, uh,
Yeah. Oh, this has been brilliant. Starting to wrap up, even though I know we could talk for hours on this subject. Um, but yeah, just wanted to finish off by saying that and to really thank you to say thank you to you to represent the whole of the male
my pleasure.
world that this is that we're able to have this conversation openly and honestly and with curiosity. That goes a hell of a long way because there are very few conversations women to men publicly about this, and we need the world to hear this. And just going back to something that I noted down that you said when we first had this conversation talking about this, that you said, unless you see men talking about this, men aren't going to listen. So you're representing and really pushing the boundaries and on that leading edge, the same way that I think of myself as part of a big group of my generation, same as you, that we're changing things. We're on this leading edge, and I think we're both on that same page of trying to shine a light on the difficult topics and make life a bit easier for ourselves. Because yeah, we're not here for long, but let's not make it any harder than it has to be.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
it's absolutely my pleasure. And again, it's just it's got to be seen. Otherwise, people won't follow you through on it.
Yeah, so thank you. And if people want to get more of your perspectives on menopause or whatever you do in life, because I know that you're pretty busy anyway, and all of this the stuff around Nikki's big adventure, um, I don't want to let her stuff overshadow yours. This is about you, but where can we find you? Do you have social media
Yeah,
things?
most of my stuff's all on Instagram, and it's just my name, Sharif Owadally. I keep it simple. And most of it, funny enough, is about Nikki. But then, like I said, as you saw on some of the adventure, I did talk a few things of um, about other stuff. This being one of them. So yeah, by all means, check
Great.
me out. And I
And
do have,
I'm going to hold you. I'm going to press you for the fact that you did say you were going to write a blog
yes, I did. Yes,
about
I did.
all of this subject. So
I did.
yeah,
I'll start trying to now. Now I've done all the stuff for the Guinness World Record. I'll start writing my blogs, and this is certainly an ongoing one. I think.
yeah, yeah, brilliant. Maybe a book as well in the future.
It might be a bit too much for this one. Might be a bit too much for this subject, but I'll work on it. I'll see what happens. Who knows?
Okay. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you so much.
No problem, Angie. Thank you very much.